Next is Mrs. Andreasen.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner, I think it's very difficult to move to performance evaluation when we cannot get a clear idea of the regularity and legality of the problems. But I would like to bring to your attention the fact that today youth unemployment has grown to 11.7%, the highest rate we have ever had in Europe. And my concern is that you say that the crisis has destroyed the results or the efforts made by the European Commission in this policy. But I believe that if all that we have been putting into the budget in this area would have been properly invested, we would have had today young entrepreneurs that would have been able to take us out of the crisis. And this is not the situation today. And you will blame the banks or the financial institutions because they don't give credit to these people. And this may be part of the problem. But I am concerned that you don't recognize responsibility in this crisis, in the problem of unemployment, because I believe there's something wrong with the policy of the Commission. And I think the results, in general terms, are showing this. And we are at this point in time, many of us sitting here, involved in the negotiation of a budget for 2013 and involved in the negotiation of a budget for the period 2014-2020. And frankly, I don't want to put any more money of my taxpayers into a policy that doesn't work. Now the time for considerations is ended. We need to find solutions to get out of this crisis. And obviously unemployment is the key issue. But I don't see that this policy is getting Europe out of the crisis. I would like to hear from you, at least if you recognize 1 or 2 points where you think the policy has gone wrong. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Commissioner.
Thank you very much, and I welcome the shift towards a result-based assessment of the ESF and, in more general terms, the EU financial instruments also in the longer run. That's why we opened up this avenue in the new regulation, which the Commission proposed. But let's now focus on the current situation. I agree that this is extremely important. Why youth unemployment shoot up, especially in the first phase of the crisis in countries like Spain, for example? What happened before, and what role the EU funds and within those the ESF played in that? In my view, this role is very modest, and the fundamental problem is the way some of these economies where youth unemployment became extremely high suddenly, the way of development they chose in the previous cycle, particularly in the case of Spain, the fact that economic growth was linked too much to a few sectors, like construction, property, tourism, and this turned out to be a bubble. And unfortunately, in the boom time, this was very attractive also for many young people. Many of them might have just given up studies or training for quick earnings instead of investing in themselves. Now, how much this could have been avoided by a different approach from the point of view of the EU funds, and namely the ESF, I believe very little, to the extent that the design of the programs themselves was in the hands of the member states and the regions, and we lacked some of the contextual pillars of a better governance. So what we already have now, but only in the last 2 years, the capacity to also influence the member states' policies through the economic governance, the European semester, to provide country-specific recommendations, and to establish an explicit link between the recommendations and the use of the EU financial instruments would provide a better way. For example, for the modernization of vocational training. I just saw last week in Lisbon a project where the ESF, in an excellent way, has been used to modernize vocational training with cutting-edge technologies. Now, could it have prevented the crisis of Portugal? Probably not, because the investment went into the right direction from the EU resources. But the wider policies concerning the competitiveness and the financial management of the country did not create the right environment. And when the crisis came, unfortunately, many forces were aggravating instead of mitigating the fallout from the financial crisis. So this is, I think, a very complex question. I would agree with you that the previous policies could have been perhaps more robust in some skills which will be more necessary in the future, like entrepreneurship, like language skills, which suddenly now come to the forefront of the training developments, especially in some of the southern countries. ICT, which is also a horizontal knowledge which is needed in every profession. So, but these conclusions have been drawn. These conclusions have been drawn not least in the employment package, which the Commission adopted in April, and that provides guidance when the Commission continues dialogue with the Member States about the design and the content of the future programmes in this period.